So, welcome back, everyone. And again, Happy New Year. And wish you guys had a great time off. This week, we have to cover some important topics that we have seen in past lectures. And one of them is doing asynchronous operations. We saw something called doing asynchronous operations in React last week. And if you guys remember, we built an application where we were showing a list of fruits and list of fruits were filterable. And initially we had the list of fruits in our React component, but then later we moved the list of fruits to a backend dummy database, and we were calling API to to get the list of fruits. So that is the topic number one of today. So this is kind of a recap. So because we have done already an example of fruit, I wanted to do something new and be different from the textbook so that you guys have enough sample of same thing to go over once you guys decide. Let me share what I have built today. And again, I'll provide all the code so you guys can see the code and everything. So first Pokemon. Uh, I sure do. So let me minimize this. This is an application which is calling some server, some remote server, which is not in our code base to get the details of a specific Pokemon. In this case, a Ditto. Ditto's height is 3 and weight is 40. So this is not something that we have put inside our code, the height and weight, but that is coming from an API. How do I know that? Is first let's look at the network calls of our Chrome Chrome. And if you guys see the lot of options, we see a lot of calls here. So this is you guys, some of you might be familiar, but if you are not, you can filter the network calls, and API calls are usually fetch or etc. So you see there's something called an endpoint, okay, API dot go API v2 and then Pokemon and then slash Ditto. So this is giving us, if you go to this tab, response tab, it is giving us so many details and let's go to the Ditto and then weight. It is giving us the 40, the weight, and then height. So you could pick anything from this information. Uh, we chose to display the height and the weight. You could have shown the ID of the Pokemon, which is 132. So how this was built. So if you go here, this is coming from our previous class only. So there is a use effect inside use effect. Mm. This is a use effect, and we are doing use effect to call an API, which is our endpoint. And just give me a second. The light is flickering, so I need to give me a second, guys. So, so this is our API endpoint that we saw here. If we go here, the Poke API v2 slash Pokemon, and then at the end we are providing the Pokemon name Ditto. So I want a name instead of Ditto. Let's say if we wanted a Pikachu. Hope I spelled it correct. Fix. Let's see. What's the correct spelling for? We find the right spelling for Pikachu. Yeah, it's the right spelling. So um, instead of Ditto, if we were to give, it'll give that information for Pikachu height 4. And now if you see, we call the same API using Pikachu. We were doing very similar. We instead of calling the Pokemon API, we were calling an API that we had built to get the list of fruits. So that is how. we use the fetch call, something called which is built in JavaScript function fetch to call an API and then get the detail. So whatever detail we are getting, this API response, that the entire response we are seeing, we are saving that in Pokemon, and then we are showing Pokemon dot height. We could have easily done that, something like that. This ID, and I believe it's Pokemon dot ID only, and we could show the ID. So that being said, this is one thing where we are calling an external service from our React code to show some information which is not present or present directly inside our code. So our application is now dynamic, and this happens when you go to, let's say, Airbnb or Amazon or anything, right? Where you enter a product name, you get the detail for that product or that Airbnb listing. This is how they do it. Now, if you see, we have only one option to do this, which is Pikachu, and we have either we can, but we do not have an option to uh, change what Pokemon to show. That's where we can go back to some of the things that we have done in the past, uh, which is like maybe having input box, like, and then showing the uh, showing the details, or maybe dynamically fetching the details, So I have the code prepared for that so that we don't spend overdoing the same code. Uh, so that uh, and I'm going a little fast because we have done this in past, but feel free to stop me, okay? So the same thing, a previous same previous stuff. We are showing it ditto, but now we have an ability to enter the Pokemon name for which we want the uh, Pikachu. So instead of showing ditto always, we'll show default ditto, but instead of showing ditto now, we can show any Pokemon that we want by searching it. So that way we can make it dynamic. If we remove this, then we go back to showing the ditto. We can configure any Pokemon to be our default. For this purposes, we just have ditto. So let's see what's happening in the code to do this. So it's the same set of code, just like previous, but we added another term, which is a search term. And this search term is something that is helping us to pass the information to API. So if you look at the line 30, and I'll bring the this one side by side so you guys can compare, is line 14 is what we had originally, and line 13 is something that new. We added a API endpoint exactly the what we had previously, and we added, instead of hard coding Pikachu or Ditto, we are leveraging the search term. So whatever user has entered here, so here I entered Pikachu. We are using it if it's not empty, so which is identified by an empty string. If my search term is not empty, use my search term. Otherwise, use Ditto. By doing that, we are making our application even more dynamic, which is going one step beyond and making sure that our application is able to fetch the details that are really um, what user want rather than always showing Ditto or Pikachu. So that are our two topics that we have done something similar in the past, but I want to take a moment of pause here and ensure you guys get this. Uh, are we good here? Maybe some thumbs ups or okay for me would help me to understand that you guys got this. Otherwise, I can repeat. O- Okay, so that is a important topic for this. Now, if you look at our if you look at our let me refresh this and let me clear all of this. As soon as I start typing something, we are calling an API with unfinished user information, and uh, we are calling the API. So I really what I want to type is Pikachu, but I'm still at just pi. But I have called something and tried to call the Pokemon API with 5, which is not a valid Pokemon name. So we get no not found. And we are seeing something went wrong based on our code. This is not a good user experience. We need to prevent users from uh, having to do this. So to do that, we have to have we can use a strategy, some a strategy like only search for Pokemon when I confirm that I'm ready to search. And what's the best way to do that? If you remember in the past, we have built forms where we added user form and etc. And those forms had a submit button, and that button can help us achieve uh, our goal much faster. So let's go back to our code and let me remove this. Let's add a button. Let's add a breakpoint before that, and then add a. We'll have something on click of this button. I'm keeping it empty for now, and then submit search. So our button is submit search. So how we can prevent something from triggering our APIs? Well, it's very simple. If you think we are, if you look at the use effect, it is getting triggered because search term is in the dependency of this use effect. Uh, it is getting triggered every time something is changed in search term. So Pika every time. So this is a change. Any character type is a change in search term or our search variable, and that is triggering an API call. Well, we can prevent by just having a final, let's say we call it as a, let's copy this and the final search query or something. And instead of uh, search term, let's add the final search query as the dependency, which will trigger the API call. So this function, fetch function, right? Um, and let's change our on click of a button. We have to simply do is initially the final search query will be empty, but on click of the button, we do is set final search query and whatever the current search term is, right? Did you guys get this logic? If not, just let me know. Let me clear this. So now if I type anything, I'm not seeing the information getting changed. And instead, once I'm satisfied what I wanted to uh, type, uh, I am submitting it. So let's see. Ah, we got it. So we are saying Pika. So if you could really do anything, and that would sort of trigger this happening. So, oh, only a mistake. So now I only call the API when I clicked on submit search. So I could type the full word now and saw the relevant information. So let me do this to show you guys the difference. Is I'm typing Pika, so nothing is happening. Once I'm satisfied with my entire entry, I'm submitting my search term. So this is the topic number 3 that we wanted to cover. So any confusion in this? How we went from a static search to a dynamically showing of Pokemon information to how not showing unfinished information. So we had a journey here. We were only showing one Pokemon information. Then we allowed users to enter another Pokemon, whatever Pokemon they wanted to enter, and then our journey sort of reached to a place where we only do the search when we want to, instead of free-flowingly doing the search. Are you guys clear on this? Let me see if somebody has any questions on the chat. Otherwise, we'll move forward to next topic, which is on the memoization. So the actually, because all of these things we have done in past, it's little, you guys might feel we are going a little quick, but um, again, I keep repeating. Stop me if you guys and are looking to get more clarity or more understanding. Okay. So the third topic we want to do is, let me rename this, and I have the code for that. Is and this is something that ideally you will not be doing. Okay. So if you guys uh, are confused or have the any, I mean, this is something you guys should not be needing to do in real world scenarios. So this is again the same application with the memoization. So what do I mean by memoization, right? So if you look at the line uh, 27 to 29, we have a use effect. And if I put this use effect, uh, we actually defined a function called the handle fetch Pokemon. And so what we did was, if I go back to our V1 code, we took this entire thing and moved it into a function. And we are calling that function instead of so if I copy paste this in here, for the side-by-side comparison, instead of doing this entire thing uh, in a use effect directly, we are defining it inside a function and then calling that function in the handle fetch Pokemon. Now, in ideal scenarios, you should not be needing to use a function as a dependency for a use effect hook. Look for opportunities to improve your code and do it more cleaner way. Textbook actually puts this as a advanced topic, but for the most realistic applications, this should be avoided. But say if you need to use it, you cannot just directly use a function by defining it. You have to use something called use callback. Otherwise, what happens is if you do not use callback, when the component gets triggered, right? So let's do this. So actually, this will kill the application, so I will not do it. Once you do this without using use callback and you're using that function inside a use effect hook, when your code first runs, the function will be called. And once the function is called, it will change itself again. It will, and once it is changed, it will trigger the use effect again. That will call the function again, and that will change the function again. So you see where I'm going with this. Uh, Calling the function changes the function, and changing the function calls the function again. So we are going in a circular manner in a loop, and this loop has no end to it. Once you have this kind of loop, the application simply crashes. There's a point that'll come when your function, your code will just freeze, or your browser will freeze, and it will completely break down. To avoid that, React provides another hook called use callback, and use callback is used for creating a function, but that function does not change until a dependency that is defined in the use callback changes. So in simpler terms, from our code, this function, which is defined using use callback, handle Pokemon, fetch Pokemon, this function changes uh, only when search term, which is a user entered search here, changes instead of changing randomly. So this is useful to break that cycle, that loop that we were discussing. Because you once you open your React code or your React application, this will run and this function will run, but it will not change itself due to use callbacks memoization. What is memoization? Memoization is, in simpler terms, remembering some previous value of something and only updating that value based on a condition. And updating here, we are remembering the function, and we are updating the function only when search term changes. So that is a use case of memoization. But I repeat again, there should rarely be a scenario. If you're doing something like this where you are providing a function as a dependency to use effect, a function as a dependency to use effect, then there is an opportunity for you to do more cleanly and maybe refactor your code. This is a this can lead to unwanted complications in your code base, and I would suggest to avoid it if possible. We don't want to have overcomplicated code base. But to see this in effect, if I refresh my page and clean everything up, I can still search for any Pokemon I want, and it works the same way. And I can't spell Pikachu right today. And similarly, we can use any Pikachu or Ditto or any Pokemon that you guys like. Uh, with that though, this topic memoization is a bit of a complex but not so complex concept. But the key thing would be, I repeat again, if you're putting a function to a use effect, maybe look for an opportunity to clean it up. So if you look at this thing, yeah, we are calling the API over and over again for each word. We can again use something called submit like we had previously to let me add that back. I had the submit here in the before, and so now what I did was I added another variable just like before where I'm saying the search term final and using that as my dependency. And now instead of for every character, only when I say search, then it searches. Otherwise, the previous information uh, stays intact. So that is that. The four topics we wanted to cover today, I'll stop sharing and go back to um, talking again. So let me actually stop recording.